In this episode, we turn to two of the most practical ideas in modern security because they do not live only in policies, audits, or architecture diagrams. They show up in ordinary daily choices about who should be allowed to do what, who should approve what, and how much power any one person or system should carry at a given moment. Least privilege, LP, is the idea that a person or process should have only the minimum access needed to perform a legitimate task. Separation of duties, SOD, is the idea that certain responsibilities should be split so that one person does not control every important step in a sensitive action. These ideas matter because security problems often grow out of normal convenience, not dramatic villainy. When teams grant too much access or let one person handle an entire sensitive workflow alone, they create conditions where mistakes, abuse, and compromise can do much more damage than necessary. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A beginner should first understand that LP is not about distrusting everybody or making work artificially hard. It is about matching access to current need as closely as possible so that every account, role, and permission has a clear reason to exist. If someone works in customer support, that person may need to view order status, account notes, and approve support knowledge. But that does not automatically mean they should also edit billing rules, approve refunds above a certain threshold, or access payroll records. The basic question is always what this person needs right now to perform assigned responsibilities safely and efficiently. That makes LP a daily decision, not a one-time setup choice buried in an onboarding form. Work changes, projects change, and temporary tasks appear, so the right amount of access also changes. The safest environment is not the one where people collect every permission they have ever needed. It is the one where access stays closely tied to actual responsibilities as those responsibilities change over time. SOD works alongside LP but addresses a different kind of risk. Instead of asking whether a person has too much access overall, it asks whether a single person can carry out too many connected parts of a sensitive process without independent oversight. Think about a workflow involving creating a new vendor, approving payment, and then reconciling the transaction. If one person can do all three steps alone, that creates a stronger opportunity for fraud, concealment, or serious error. The same logic appears in security administration, where one person should not always be able to request elevated access, approve it, and then audit their own activity afterward. SOD does not mean every tiny task needs multiple approvals. It means organizations identify high-risk actions where too much concentrated control becomes dangerous. That concentration can be risky even if the person involved is trusted and well-intentioned, because errors are easier to miss when nobody else has a reason or ability to check the work from a different angle. These ideas become powerful when you realize how often daily decisions quietly shape the real access model of an organization. Policies may say the company follows LP and SOD, but the true test happens when a manager says, just give them admin access for now. When a project lead asks for broad shared credentials because it is faster, or when a team lets one person handle a full approval chain because everyone is busy. Those moments often look small, temporary, and harmless, yet they are exactly where good principles either stay alive or begin to erode. Security maturity is not proven only by formal documentation. It is proven by how ordinary requests are handled under time pressure. A secure culture learns to pause and ask whether the request is truly necessary, whether a narrower permission would work, whether an independent check is needed, and whether the convenience of today could become the exposure of next month. That habit of questioning routine access choices is what turns principle into practice. One simple way to understand the difference between LP and SOD is to picture a key ring and a chain of custody. LP is about limiting how many keys each person carries and making sure those keys open only the doors required for current work. SOD is about making sure one person does not control every key needed to start, approve, hide, and complete a sensitive action from beginning to end. An employee might have only a small set of keys and still violate SOD if those few keys cover all stages of a high-risk process. Another employee might not violate SOD in a workflow, but still violate LP by carrying access to many unrelated systems they no longer need. The principles overlap, but they solve different problems. Together, they reduce both excess reach and excessive control. That combination matters because security failures often occur when someone has broader access than needed and also holds too much unchecked influence over a complete business or technical process. Consider a help desk example because it is easy for beginners to picture. A support technician may need to unlock accounts, reset passwords, and verify user identity through an approved process. That technician may not need permanent access to create executive accounts, disable monitoring controls, or modify security group memberships tied to sensitive applications. LP says the technician gets the tools necessary for the support role and no more. SOD adds another layer by asking whether the same technician should also be the person who approves exceptional access requests, changes the rules used to verify user identity, and audits the logs of their own actions. When too much control sits with one operator, the process becomes fragile even if the operator is skilled and trustworthy. A phishing attack against that account, a rushed mistake during a busy day, or a misunderstanding of a request can then produce much larger consequences than the organization intended. Good daily enforcement keeps support work efficient while still placing limits and independent checks around more sensitive actions. Finance offers another clear example because SOD has long been important there, even before cybersecurity became a central concern in every business. Suppose one employee can create a supplier, approve a payment, and update the records that explain why the payment happened. That is not simply a technical issue. It is a control issue because the organization has allowed a single person to initiate, authorize, and cover a sensitive transaction path. LP would ask whether that person really needs all those permissions to perform current duties. SOD would ask whether those duties should be combined in one role at all. Now imagine the same employee also keeps access from a prior assignment, such as broad reporting privileges or the ability to export entire data sets. Suddenly, a routine business role carries unnecessary visibility and too much process control at once. The risk is not limited to dishonesty. A typo, a misunderstood invoice, or a careless data export can also cause serious harm when privileges and responsibilities are too concentrated. These principles apply just as strongly in technical administration. A system administrator may need elevated capabilities to maintain servers, troubleshoot outages, or apply changes to infrastructure. That does not automatically mean the same administrator should use a powerful account for everyday reading, email, and general browsing. LP encourages the use of lower privilege accounts for normal work and reserves elevated access for legitimate administrative tasks. SOD goes further by asking whether the same person who develops a major change should also approve it alone for production, implement it without review, and then validate its success without any independent check. In smaller organizations, perfect separation may not always be possible, but the principle still matters because it pushes teams to add compensating oversight where full separation cannot exist. Logs, peer review, change records, and management approval all become more important when one person must hold powerful rights. The point is not perfection. The point is reducing unchecked concentration of technical power in daily operating decisions. Temporary access is one of the most common places where both LP and SOD break down quietly. A person needs extra rights for a project, a deadline, an emergency, or coverage during a teammate's absence. The request sounds reasonable, and often it is reasonable, so the access is granted. The real problem begins when nobody defines how limited the access should be, how long it should last, and what review or approval should surround its use. LP asks whether the temporary permission can be scoped narrowly to the exact task rather than to an entire system or administrative role. SOD asks whether the same person gaining temporary power is also bypassing the normal independent check that should still apply to high-risk actions. Many organizations accumulate risk through short-term exceptions that quietly become long-term reality. Daily enforcement means treating temporary access as something that deserves boundaries, owners, and expiration, not as a casual shortcut that can remain in place forever just because removing it feels less urgent than granting it did. Managers and supervisors play a major role in enforcement because they are often closest to the real business need behind access requests. At the same time, being close to the work can make it tempting to approve broad access quickly so the team can move faster. A strong manager learns to translate operational urgency into precise access rather than into oversized permissions. Instead of saying give them everything the old team had just in case, a better question is what exact actions this person must perform, what data they truly need, and which parts of the workflow should still require someone else's review. This is where beginners should see that LP and SOD are not just technical settings handled by security teams. They are management decisions, business process decisions, and accountability decisions. When supervisors understand them well, access approvals become more thoughtful and more defensible. When supervisors treat access as an all-purpose convenience tool, technical teams often inherit a messy environment full of vague entitlements and weak control boundaries. Another reason daily decisions matter is that roles rarely stay as neat as diagrams suggest. People cover for each other, join cross-functional projects, receive temporary authority, or inherit responsibilities during reorganizations. Over time, those changes can blur the original role design until one account holds a strange mix of permissions from several past needs. LP helps organizations ask whether the current access still fits the current job, while SOD helps them ask whether the combination of duties now sitting with that user has become too powerful. This is especially important because risk often hides in combinations. A single permission may not look alarming by itself, but when paired with another permission, it may let a person both create and approve, both modify and erase, or both grant and validate. Daily enforcement means looking beyond individual checkboxes and considering what the full set of access enables in practice. That broader view is how teams catch dangerous combinations before they become normal. A common misconception is that LP always slows work down and that SOD always creates bureaucracy. In reality, both principles are meant to support dependable work by reducing the chance that one mistake or one compromised account can produce wide damage. Another misconception is that only senior administrators or finance executives need to worry about these controls. The truth is that everyday roles across support, operations, development, human resources, and business applications all involve access choices where too much privilege or too much concentrated control can create avoidable risk. Some people also assume that trust removes the need for these controls, but security is not built on the idea that trusted people never make errors. It is built on the understanding that good systems limit the impact of ordinary mistakes and make harmful actions harder to complete unnoticed. Trust matters, but trust alone is not a control. Clear boundaries, narrow permissions, and independent checks are controls, and they are most effective when applied consistently to routine work. When full SOD is hard to achieve, especially in smaller teams, the right response is not to ignore the principle altogether. Instead, organizations should think in terms of reducing concentration where possible and adding other safeguards where direct separation is limited. If one person must perform several connected tasks, then activity logging, after-the-fact review, clearer management oversight, and tighter scoping of permissions become even more important. If one administrator must handle both change and implementation during an outage, that may be necessary, but the organization can still require documented approval, peer awareness, and later validation by someone independent. LP also helps in those situations because even if perfect SOD is not available, the user still should not hold more authority than the job requires. Beginners sometimes think a principle has failed unless it can be applied in a perfect textbook form. Real security work is often about moving the environment towards safer, narrower, more reviewable decisions even when conditions are messy and resources are limited. By the end of this discussion, the core message should feel very practical. LP asks whether each person or process has only the access needed for legitimate current work, and SOD asks whether sensitive workflows have enough independence built into them to keep one person from controlling everything that matters. These are not abstract ideas reserved for audit season. They shape the quality of daily choices about approvals, exceptions, role changes, temporary access, administrative activity, and business process design. When teams enforce them consistently, they reduce attack surface, limit the damage of mistakes, make fraud harder, and create a healthier balance between efficiency and control. When teams ignore them in small, everyday moments, risk quietly accumulates until broad access and concentrated authority start to look normal. Strong security culture is built one routine decision at a time, and few decisions matter more than keeping privileges narrow and critical duties appropriately divided.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.